Welcome to Harnessing Change, Insights from Boston Tech's Leaders. I'm John Bernstein, Regional President of PNC Bank in New England, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to this next panel. Our region is known for a hub of innovation, and one of the leading economic forces of our area is the technology sector that we have here that's undergoing tremendous change and innovation with AI. But what's still critical to everything we do is the talent of the people that we have, and I'm thrilled with the talent and the people that we have in this room today, and I'm excited to hear what they have to say. Boston has a great promise and a future, and New England has a great promise and future for where we're headed today, and I look forward to hearing the insights and the perspectives from this panel. Thank you.
I'm Boston Globe tech reporter Aaron Pressman, and I'm also really excited with this great panel we have to represent not just Boston's tech scene, but also the suburbs and even getting a little north up towards Portland, Maine. So to introduce our panelists today, on the far right from me is Steve Fredette, who is the president and one of the co-founders of Toast. That is the restaurant payments company that you probably have seen a million times. I saw in their most recent quarterly results, they have 120,000 locations and more than $60 billion worth of volume that went through their system. So that's Steve. In the middle, we have Melissa Smith. Melissa is the chief executive of WEX, which I looked up in 1983, started as Wright Express Corporation. And they are one of the, similarly, behind the payments that companies are using at fuel stations, but they have also expanded into benefits and a lot of other areas. Maybe we'll touch on that shortly. And also many billions of dollars worth of volume going through their systems. Then closest to me is our newest one of our newest chief executives in the Boston tech scene, Gary Cohen, who took over just in May at iRobot. iRobot is the company you may know as the automated vacuum seller and maker. And I looked up, you can get everything from the Roomba Essential for $200 all the way up to the Roomba Combo 10 Max, which looked really cool, for $1,400. And we'll talk a little bit about how all those innovations came to be. But I wanted to start out by talking about our local tech ecosystem. It's a very competitive world. Obviously, there's Silicon Valley. There's all kinds of places in Europe and Asia that we're competing with. I wanted to go through and start with each panelist and talk about what are some of the strengths, why your companies are located here, and what you're getting from this ecosystem. Steve, you're a Massachusetts guy. You were here with, before Toast, you were at Endeca, a big software company. Tell us a little about the strengths, as Toast sees it, of the local ecosystem for tech.
Well, I think one of the most important things is just talent. And that's the talent that is in the ecosystem, people that you can hire to be managers as you start to scale, directors, VPs, et cetera. You want to be able to hire people that are experts in your particular type of technology or particular type of business. So in our case, B2B software, but we're also a hardware company. So I remember early on networking with former iRobot people to try to figure out, how do we build a hardware business? And we're also a fintech. And so I'm very familiar with WEX, and Boston's got a financial services ecosystem and a fintech ecosystem as well. And so the talent of the ecosystem around us is really important. And then also the talent that we can develop. So the talent coming out of universities. I went to MIT, my wife went to Northeastern, we've hired a lot of Northeastern co-ops, we've spoken at MIT, at Harvard, we've hired from all the colleges in the area, and that talent pool of really well-educated, very creative, very entrepreneurial type of talent has been super critical to our success. And so the ecosystem of entrepreneurs is also important as we think about innovating and continuing to build more product. It didn't just start with point of sale, where we did start with point of sale. We didn't just finish with point of sale. We've continued to build and innovate and build and launch new products. And so that ecosystem has helped us do that.
I definitely want to talk. We'll come back to innovation. Put a pin in that, as they say. Melissa, you're a little up north of here, but what's the tech ecosystem like for greater New England and up in Maine? How do you see it?
Yeah, no, I would say actually many of the same similar things. On top of that, that university system extends up. We're in Portland, Maine. We've got the Rue Institute, which is graduating people who have advanced degrees, which is really helpful.
The Rue Institute is part of Northeastern?
It's part of Northeastern, yes, and it's actually co-located with our offices, and so that's a wonderful way for us to get talent. And we're, like all of us, are a global company. We have 7,000 employees, and about a third are technologists. And so we're drawing from here. It's an important hub, and I would say for all those reasons, the colleges, the entrepreneurial spirit, the strength of the talent. And then we're also adding across other areas of the world as well. And I think that great combination of skills, of working in multiple countries and in multiple areas of expertise is a wonderful collection.
You said 6 things I want to follow up on, but I'm going to go to Gary first. Gary, iRobot is in a place where there's a lot of robotics firms around here, but also you have worked at companies not just in Boston, but all at Connecticut and I think one in Indiana. So tell me a little about how you see the strengths of the local ecosystem as iRobot's point of view.
Yeah, and I would echo everything that's been said about talent. We were at the forefront of building the robotics infrastructure and ecosystem in Boston, and the talent is very mobile and people know each other and it's a very collaborative environment. But so much of it is the university system that we should be so proud of. We've sourced people from MIT and Tufts and Wentworth and UMass and especially Northeastern. And we have many people that started as co-ops, so we've built our own talent, and that's been very important for us.
That's really a great point. iRobot has been around since the 90s and being invested back into those schools as well as taking the talent out of them.
There was nothing better than having lunch with our co-ops this summer. Every Thursday I would have lunch with our interns, and it was such a great way to connect back with the university system.
All right, Melissa, you brought up, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say on the universities, we often think about hiring undergrad, computer science majors, co-ops, interns, et cetera. And first, that works really well. But one of the things I think in robotics, the other thing I just want to plug for universities is it's the professors that are doing cutting-edge research. It's the PhD students, the postdocs that are coming out of those labs. And in robotics, I think that's particularly vibrant. It's such a hard tech type of thing. And so you think about, I don't know, a lot of the robotics, you're probably more of an expert in this. I think that maybe we speak a little bit to that as well.
All right, so now I want to talk about maybe some of the challenges for New England and Boston. And Melissa, I want to go back to you because you started to talk about this, but all 3 of you have employees and offices around the world doing not just grunt work, but high-tech, advanced work. So Melissa, what do you think are some of the challenges for the local tech ecosystem based on talent you can get elsewhere? Why do you go elsewhere?
So Boston is known, and this area is known for the entrepreneurialism. And so a lot of startup community. But when we've gotten to the point, as we've scaled, we're looking for people who've worked for larger companies because our company keeps growing. We're 4 times the size we were 10 years ago, and so
that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And so as we continue to grow, we're looking for people who have seen things at a different scale, and we're finding that most of that talent ends up being in the West Coast, and so. We're supplementing the talent that we have. We continue to hire in Boston and Portland. It's one of our core hubs, as well as outside of the United States. But I will say, looking for people who've been there, done that at much bigger companies, there's not as much of that in Boston.
We do not have a Google here. That is true. Steve, what do you think? Why does Toast go outside of Boston? Can't everyone just come from here?
Yeah, I echo the same theme there. Like, we went public over $10 billion valuation, and so you look at saying, where else can we find people that have been we want to grow to 20 or 30 or 50, where's the 50 billion or the Google, the 500 billion trillion dollar company to find somebody who's operated that level of scale and could to help us replicate some of those playbooks, and it's just hard to find that. It's just a smaller talent pool here, and so we do have executives actually all over the country and the world that have seen different scale out at companies. There's big companies everywhere, of course, and so we get to tap into that. I also think as we think about global expansion, for us, that's been valuable. So our Dublin Engineering Center led our international expansion into the UK, Canada, and Ireland. We have engineers in Toronto as well.
When you say expansion, you mean to customers in those?
Our own business expansion globally. Our teams in Bangalore and Chennai, I think, would be very excited to think about bringing Toast into the Asia Pacific market. And so I think that global talent is really helpful as we think about the benefit of a diverse team as you just see the world in a broader way. If we have all of our team here that's Boston local, we kind of get a little bit of our blinders on. Sometimes we talk about fast food as an example, and we talk about we think about fast food as McDonald's or Burger King, and people will say, well, all these small businesses that are fast food places, we're like, nah, we never see that. But if you go to the South, if you go to Louisiana, if you go to Georgia, there's a lot of small fast food places. And our executive team is like, yeah, that doesn't really exist. But it's our blind spot, right, as leadership team, because we're in the Northeast, we're in the West Coast. So the benefit of having leaders and people in the company from all over the world is you see opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily see otherwise.
Diversity, it can never be underrated. Gary, I wanted to go to you on this question of challenges in the Boston area, but also, you're of these three companies, you're making a lot of things that we're putting in our houses, the Roombas. Manufacturing has not been a strength of Boston or America, but tell me a little about how do you see the challenges here, and where are you going to manufacture things?
Well, for many years, we've been making and sourcing our products from Asia, and we'll continue to do that. And that's just a nature of where the infrastructure of the products are. The entire supply chain is outside of the United States. So it comes back to the question, what can we do here? Where can we innovate, and where can we leverage our expertise? And that really comes down to the thinking and the innovating. And we've embraced Boston and are building upon our focus up in Bedford, iRobot Labs. And so we're focusing our efforts on where can we be on the front end of innovation, and we want to make sure all the talent is developed there so we can work with partners outside of the U.S. To add value. And that's what our future vision is.
I have a question from the audience. It's more for our two local people, but the transit infrastructure, the MBTA, does not have a great reputation. People are curious out there, is the transportation infrastructure at all a challenge for you in hiring or expanding your business?
That's a tough one. The Green Line wasn't always the best, I'd say. We were in Fenway for a long time. You're on the Green Line, and if you lived across the river, you have to take the Red Line all the way in and all the way back out again. So it could be helpful. We found people would find it was easier to drive in to Fenway than it was to take public transportation. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a blocker, though. People got to work, and it wasn't the biggest employee topic of concern, I would say.
Gary, you're out in the suburbs where I don't think there is much for public transportation. Does that ever come up?
No, I mean, we are reverse commute, which helps, and we do source interns and co-ops from the university system, and people have figured out a way to get to where we are. And we have also, been able to accommodate with a little remote work to make it easier for people for commuting. So far it hasn't been an issue.
All right, you've given me the perfect segue to my next subject, and I'll start with Melissa. We just saw one of the biggest tech companies in the world, if not the biggest, say they wanted everybody back in the office 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. What's been your view about remote and hybrid and full-time and all that? How are you handling that right now?
So we think about it more as moments that matter. So I think it's really important to bring people together. Like my executive team, we are distributed as well. About half live in the Portland area. We're together 1 week a month, and in our Portland office, people are in generally 2 days a week, optional, but I would say actually pretty high attendance rate. And then from a hiring perspective, we've designated hubs. So there's certain areas in the United States where we're intentionally hiring. This, greater Portland, Boston is one of the hubs, with the idea that over time we'll have more clusters of where our employees are, because we're at this point really very distributed. From the point of the pandemic on, we really started hiring anywhere. And so we're just being really intentional of how we're approaching it. And in the meantime, we are being very intentional when we bring people together to have it be something that's memorable for them, and so that they're not just coming into an office to sit on a screen, that they're actually,
right.
Yeah, that just makes people angry, frankly. And so it's working actually pretty well for us in this hybrid world where people are coming in, but I do think it's really important that there are connection points on a regular basis.
Gary, what about at iRobot?
We are a global company. We have a global footprint. So at any given time, we're communicating with people that are in different time zones. So in that regard, we're really just talking about US when it comes to back to work, because most of our other employees have been in the office for a long time.
Interesting.
And also our commercial teams are all spread out as well. So we invested in technology several years ago to make it easier to communicate. We have Zoom meetings that are very efficient. And so, similar to what Melissa said, we bring people back for cultural moments and also for big business reviews to make sure we have a reason for people to be in the office.
Steve, I want to hear from you too, but tell me also, isn't there like some operational savings if you have more people, working remotely? You don't have to have as big an office.
Well, so look, I don't know. The budget's always something that you have to think about. But there's a lot of benefit of getting people together in person from a relationship, human relationships, like just Zoom's not the same. So to build, we collaborate better when we've all met in person before. Zoom can work well for many other things, but I think there's a lot of things that are still better in person. The trick, of course, is that since we have hired so many people pretty spread out across the country and across the globe at this point, well, does everybody to get to what? We can't get everybody together at a company if we're across so many times and we're such a global company. It's no longer realistic to get the whole company together. And we used to do this when we were a startup. We would get the whole company, fly everybody together to Boston once a year. So that's no longer realistic. But that costs money to travel. You got to pay for the hotels and pay for flights and so on. And so while you may save on some of the office costs for people working from home, you have additional expenses around T&E. So it's just trying to find the right balance between those things as we navigate, what the future looks like. Because people want to get together. People that are remote want to come in, but we can't get everybody in as much as people want. But people also don't necessarily want to come into the office 5 days a week either. So we're sort of stuck in this place I would say, as a lot of tech companies, we're all going through the same question of how do we figure out what the future looks like and get the right balance of efficiency from not commuting, but productivity on certain tasks that are better in person.
Got it. Okay. Before we leave this whole area of the New England tech ecosystem, I wanted to ask you about what maybe do you think could other organizations or the government be doing that would make it even better for tech in the local area, or for at least from your company's point of view? We've seen their life sciences in Massachusetts got a huge boost from some funding that the state government did. I'm wondering if there's any things that are on the top of your mind about what government or other institutions around could do that would help out growth in tech here.
We're not all jumping.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, just continuing to invest in the university system and making sure that there's opportunities for people in the general area. I mean, as the broader economy improves, that benefits all of us. And I think just having that ecosystem be very vibrant, reasons for companies to stay, reasons for companies to come to Boston. So if there are more iRobots, that only benefits all of us.
I think there's two things in the New England area that I think are consistent: housing.
Cost of housing.
Cost of housing and having enough housing are both problems, and I hear that throughout New England. And the second one is childcare. So if I think of places where the government can lean in, those are both places that I actually think it's good for not just us as companies, but it's good for the way people are able to live in this region.
Got it. Steve, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that's a good theme. Like certainly our leaders in the public sector can help make our community a better place to live. And that goes a long way for people wanting to come here. But the leaders can also invest in the tech ecosystem itself to make this a destination tech center. And it could be industry specific. Mass robotics is a good example we were talking about earlier, where the governments have invested in creating that program, and it creates a cluster of technology companies around that. It creates a whole ecosystem that allows us all to win and lift each other up. So I think more of that would be encouraged from my perspective. But then making sure that we can do things to attract companies to stick around and attract companies to join here. So we opened an office in Omaha, and we opened an office in Dublin, and most states have, or most countries have some sort of group whose job it is to try to go and attract companies to their area. So Boston's no different.
Gary, are you familiar with mass robotics? I mean, is that a model that maybe we could put to other parts of tech?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I spent a lot of time on, so I'm fairly new to this part of the industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to switch topics a little bit and talk. We promised the people we'd talk a little bit about managing through economic uncertainty. And I think all three of the companies represented here, and probably hundreds and hundreds of others, had the challenge of managing through the pandemic. Some saw intense growth. Some saw like almost their business shut off. There was hiring, there was layoffs. So I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to talk a little bit about, in the next time we face economic uncertainty, maybe the Fed will surprise us or something. What's your framework? How do you think about dealing with that uncertainty and planning for your business? Gary, do you want to start?
Sure. So much of it is all about making decisions and communicating those decisions and expressing both empathy for people that are going through that change, but constant communication, but setting a vision of where you need to go, but constantly communicating and communicating. I ran a business through the life cycle of the pandemic. It was a very challenging time. We immediately went to Zoom. One of the benefits that I had was part of CEO networking. We talked about that earlier, just the benefit of bouncing ideas off of other people that were going through similar issues, but just making sure that we were communicating to the employee base with empathy. In many cases, we didn't know what was going to happen 3 months later, but making sure that people knew that they were comforted, that we understood what the situation was and that we were going to take care of them, and we eventually got out of it. And then just no sooner did we solve that issue that we had the global supply chain issue in my business that, again, with that uncertainty, we had to manage through it. So I think people want to see leaders that are calm, that settle the organization, and I think that's boded me well both in my prior job, but also now at iRobot, that we're going through a turnaround. So much of it is creating a vision for where we want to go as a company, that we can succeed. People want to see that short-term and long-term vision, and making them part of it. And then also just constantly communicating what that vision is, because it has to go through the entire organization to get them to buy in and get to believe. I'm just fortunate that we have a very strong mission, a very strong mission-based company, and people love the brand, consumers love the brand, retailers love the brand, so we've got a lot of people that are all really supportive of where we want to go.
Makes sense. Melissa, I don't know if you have lessons from the pandemic, or just what's your framework for dealing with all that uncertainty? Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah, I think we all learned a lot through the pandemic. And actually, I have this a vision when I think about my kids play sports. And when you watch the kids that are worried about taking risks or actually failing, they're frozen on the field. And I think that's really, there's a corollary to when you think about our work world, where people need to know it's okay that things aren't going to be perfect, particularly when you're in a really uncertain environment. And so creating a place where agility is really the primary focus, so that you actually take steps forward, even knowing that they may not be the most perfect steps. I think that's a really important piece. I think, secondly, communication. It's really important to be in front of people when you're in an uncertain period of time and saying what you know and what you don't know, because I think that just makes it more authentic and more believable. And the third thing in my mind is you almost bring your horizon in. And so you're thinking about long-term things, and you can talk about that, but you're actually focusing more on what do we need to do in the moment we're in, and how do we get through that. And you can actually then layer on, after you get through that moment, what's next. But I think that when there's a lot of uncertainty, you want people to be in execution mode. You want them to be moving forward. You want them to try things. You want them to know that they may have to shift, and then to just move to the next horizon after that.
Steve, certainly your customers were whipsawed by the pandemic, the restaurant industry. What did you learn, or what's your framework now when you think about uncertainty in the future?
I think you all sort of said a lot of what I would have said. Communication is so important. I think a team can deal with a lot of uncertainty when you're clear and transparent and give people the context as to why, hey, we're going to have to shift. We're going to have agility. We're going to have to plan for the worst, and hope for the best, or execute to get the upside. We're going to ask you to change. We're going to ask you to be with us, right? But I think the frequency has to go up when there's more uncertainty, because there's more change when there's more uncertainty, right? And so the more change there is, the more you need to communicate the why, or else people just don't feel like you're just sort of changing things on them without any context. So I think communication is such a key thing. But I think some of it's then just, like I said, plan for the worst. Like, if there's more uncertainty, we are going to be more conservative in our planning. And we hit the pandemic at a time when Toast was growing, like doubling our headcount every year. It was just the expectation of our teams was like, we're just going to keep hiring and hiring and hiring and hiring. And all of a sudden that stopped and that changed. And it's a very different culturally when people's expectation is, I solve a problem by hiring more people. No, you don't get to hire any more people anymore. Well, that's a different shift in culture. And so for some people, that was not okay. It was like, how can we not keep doing this? This is changing the strategy, changing the way we operate. But if you have the context of why, people get behind it. So I think it's comms, and it's plan for the worst, hope for the best.
I think a lot of people, not just in the tech sector, learned a lot about overhiring and changing strategy just like that. So I think that was a really illustrative example. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to take my third topic to the topic of innovation. And one of those innovative things we have right now, of course, is generative AI. So we have an unusual panel, so I asked ChatGPT for a question, what could a question that a person who works at a company with restaurant payments and fleet payments and consumer robots, what's a question I could ask all of them? So this was its first shot, and I thought it was a pretty good question. I'll try it on the panel. Each of your companies operates in a distinct market, from payments technology to consumer robotics. How do you foster innovation while staying responsive to rapid changes in technology and customer expectations? I am interested in how each of your companies, some of which are very old, medium, old, younger, how are you keeping the flame of innovation alive in your company? What keeps the culture innovating? Gary, why don't you start?
Sure. Well, we've set a strategy for our turnaround. It's called iRobot Elevate, and it's about elevating everything we do. But it's getting our financial house in order, but it's very much focused on growth, and that growth is focusing on the consumer and getting consumer insights to develop great products. Consumer products live and die by their innovation, our ability to generate new products, and we're very much focused on that effort.
How do you guys figure out what the consumer wants more in a vacuum? Or
it comes from a variety of different touch points. It's getting to know the consumers. I listen to our customer care calls when people call and have issues with using our products. We also do consumer research and sometimes just doing shop-alongs, spending time with consumers in their home. It's being observant. It's going to retail. It's seeing what competition is. And it's also visiting, going to China and Japan and seeing how consumers are using our products in other categories. So it's all about being innovative in terms of having a lens to the outside and then figuring out how you can take advantage of that and develop new products. And then getting your team to rally around that.
All right, we're getting low on time, but I want to give each Melissa and Steve a chance to answer. Melissa, why don't you go next?
Sure.
Innovation at WEX.
Innovation. So when I first started, we were $50 million in revenue. We're $2.7 billion now. So I would echo what you do at each stage has to be different. And the stage we're in right now, there's two big trends that we're really focused on. Generative AI. So AI is a bucket, but generative AI, because we do believe that it's going to change the world.
How will you use it at WEX?
So we've trained all directors and above, starting from the board all the way down. So people are actively using it every day now. It's rolling out into our products as our products are going to the marketplace. And then this move to electrification is an important... For EVs, yes. As people are going to be making that migration, that's an important trend to us. It's a place that we are a thought leader. Have developed really great products in that marketplace. And so we pick areas that we think are really big and important to us, and we put the weight behind it.
Sounds smart. Steve, you get the final word here on innovation.
Yeah, I think similarly, you have to have some top-down strategy. You have to know where you're going as a company. You want to be able to align your efforts with those things. We also like to take a startup model as far as innovation goes, because we think our teams are closer to customers. Our teams are closer to what you can and can't do with the tech or their particular domain of the product areas that they're working on. And you want to be able to have the team plant a lot of seeds, place a lot of bets, but you have to do that really lightweight. And we would, you can get into a planning cycle where you say, well, we're going to go do this big thing, and you decide to do it in the strategy offsite that year, and you put 20 people on it, but really you should have put 2 on it, because it was risky and it was likely to fail. And you only find out 12 months later when you realize when you launch something that it wasn't going to work. That's a model that I don't think works well for innovation. And so what we try to do is follow more of a startup model. Start with a seed bet, right, or seed funded bet, and that's a very small team. And that team's only job is try to find product market fit for whatever seed of an idea aligns with the bigger picture strategy. But you can now do 10 of those instead of 1. And then you can see what works, and then you can sort of fund it with the next tranche and sort of have it go through a bit of a gate, much like a VC process would do. So we've tried to model our innovation process after the venture world.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to Gary Cohen and Melissa Smith and Steve Fredette for being our panelists talking about the local tech ecosystem. I'm Aaron Pressman for the Boston Globe. Thanks for coming to the summit.